What's up guys, this is Massey. Welcome to another video. In this video I want to show you how to simplify expressions with factorials. We already know the concept of factorial. When we are talking about n factorial, it means that that's going to be equal to n times n minus 1 times n minus 2 all the way to 1. So if somebody asks you what is 7 factorial over 5 factorial, you're going to say that's going to be equal to 7 times 6 times 5 factorial divided by 5 factorial. So 7 times 6 is going to be 42. Or if we have 8 factorial times 5 factorial divided by 7 factorial times 4 factorial, we're going to have 8 times 7 factorial times 5 times 4 factorial divided by 7 factorial times 4 factorial. Now 7 factorial and 7 factorial cancel out. 4 factorial and 4 factorial is gonna cancel out as well. So we have 8 times 5 divided by 7 times 4. So it's gonna be 40 over 28, which will be 10 divided by 7. Now if you have n plus 2 factorial divided by n factorial, that's going to be n plus 2 times n plus 1 times n factorial over n factorial. So that's going to make it as n plus 2 times n plus 1. If somebody asks you what is 2n factorial over 2n minus 1 factorial, you're going to say that's going to be 2n times 2n minus 1 factorial divided by 2n minus 1 factorial. It's going to give me 2n. Now, next example is going to be n plus 2 factorial divided by n minus 1 factorial. That's going to be n plus 2 times n plus 1 times n minus 1 factorial divided by n minus 1 factorial. That's going to be n plus 2 times n plus 1 times n. Now next example is going to be n minus 1 factorial over n factorial. In that case it's going to be n minus 1 factorial over n minus 1 factorial times n, which is going to be 1 over n. Sometimes they might ask you what is 3n plus 2 factorial divided by 3n factorial. That's going to be equal to 3n plus 2 times 3n plus 1 times 3n factorial over 3n factorial. That's going to be 3n plus 2 times 3n plus 1. So these are going to be the simplified form, 3n plus 2 times 3n plus 1. Next question, how do you simplify n times n minus 1 times n minus 2 times n minus 3 factorial? That case you're going to say that's n minus 3 factorial times n minus 2 times n minus 1 times n. That's going to give me n factorial. And what if we have n times n plus 1 or n factorial times n plus 1? That's gonna give me n plus 1 factorial. If you're given n minus 1 times factorial times n squared plus n, what you need to do, you need to have n plus 1 factorial. Your factor here is going to be n times n plus 1. That's going to lead me n plus 1 factorial. Next example will be n factorial times n squared plus 3n plus 2. That's going to give me n factorial times n plus 1 times n plus 2. That's going to result in n plus 2 factorial. How do you simplify this example? N plus 3 factorial over n factorial times n plus 2. In that case, you're going to say n plus 3 factorial is n factorial times n plus 1 times n plus 2 times n plus 3. And here you have n factorial times n plus 2. When you cancel it, this cancel this one, and this one, your answer is going to be n plus 1 times n plus 3. Next example, 2n minus 1 factorial divided by 2n plus 1 factorial. In that case, you're going to say 2n minus 1 factorial is going to be equal to divided by 2n minus 1 factorial times 2n times 2n plus 1. So when you cancel these two, you're going to end up having 1 over 2n times 2n plus 1. That's going to be the simplified form. Next example is x squared minus 4 factorial divided by x minus 2 times x squared minus 5 factorial. That's going to give me x squared minus 4 times x squared minus 5 factorial divided by x minus 2 times x squared minus 5 factorial. These two cancel out. You're going to have x squared minus 4 divided by x minus 2, which is going to leave me at x plus 2, because that's the difference of squares. When you divide it by x minus 2, you're going to get x plus 2. How do you simplify n factorial to the power of 2 divided by n minus 1 factorial times n plus 1 factorial? It is going to be n factorial times n factorial, n minus 1 factorial, n plus 1 factorial. Which these two, this one is going to make it as n minus 1 factorial times n factorial, and here you have n minus 1 factorial, and this one I can write it as n times, or n factorial times n plus 1. So one more time, n factorial, I change it to n minus 1 factorial times n. N factorial here, I wrote it the same way. N minus 1 factorial, I wrote it here the same. And n plus 1 factorial, I wrote it as n factorial times n plus 1. Now, n factorial and n factorial cancel out. N minus 1 factorial and n minus 1 cancel out. It's going to be n over n plus 1. Next example is n plus 2 factorial minus n factorial divided by n plus 1 factorial. So what you need to do, you write it as n plus 1 or x plus 2 n plus 2 factorial divided by n plus 1 factorial minus n factorial over n plus 1 factorial. Then you simplified the numerator here as n plus 1 factorial times n plus 2 divided by n plus 1 factorial. And here you're going to have n factorial over n plus 1 times n factorial, which is going to give me n plus 2, because these two cancel out, minus, when these two cancel out, it's going to be 1 over n plus 1. Then we can have the common denominator, if you want to simplify it more. That's going to be n plus 2 times n plus 1 minus 1. That's going to be n squared plus 3n plus 2 minus 1 divided by n plus 1, which is going to give me n squared plus 3n plus 1 divided by n plus 1. So that's going to be the final answer. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave me a comment if you have any question. Thank you for watching and have a great day.